How is everyone doing out there this evening? I know there are a lot of broken hearts out there. Hey, 187, how are you this evening? I was just saying, I know there are a lot of broken hearts out there because the legend passed away today. Prince passed today. It still hasn't hit me, I don't think. It's still very, very hard to believe. Dr. Snowberry, how are you? What is your name? Tell me your name so I can remember it. I know a lot of folks that are really heartbroken out there tonight because Prince passed. But I did want to hop on and do my Periscope for today. I'm supposed to be Periscoping for 30 days straight. Fighter girl, how are you? Welcome to my Periscope. My name is Anita of ThatAnitaLive.com. I am the Living Unashamed speaker and success coach. If you've been following my scopes for the last couple of weeks, you know that I have been speaking about living unashamed of your secret story. Living unashamed of your secret story is not allowing any blocks or barriers, including you, to stop you from living out your dreams, your destined greatness. Not allowing any of your past insecurities, mistakes, failures to become where you get stuck. Not allowing them to be used as ammunition to stop you from going forward. Hi, Shani, how are you? I was just explaining what living unashamed is, living unashamed of your secret story. I was saying my name is Anita of ThatAnitaLive.com. Hi. And I have been speaking for the last couple of weeks about living unashamed of your secret story because a lot of people allow their baggage to keep them from becoming the great people that they were destined to be. I know a lot of people that have hopes and dreams, but they talk themselves out of them because of their baggage, or they get stuck in a certain story, or they get stuck in a certain incident or event that happened to them. And all of those things are just moments in time. They don't define you and they're not who you become. So throughout the weeks, I've hit various themes associated with living unashamed. You can find the replays, because Catch is gone. So you can find my replays on my YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search That Anita Live, or if you go to my website, ThatAnitaLive.com, go to the videos page, and I have all of my Periscopes, an interview that I did there dedicated to single moms. All of those are listed there for your viewing pleasure. But tonight I wanted to cover debunking your family patterns, because as human beings, we have a tendency to do what we see and not what we say. And we continue family patterns even though they're detrimental. We continue family patterns even though they're negative. For instance, if you look at a family and the father was an alcoholic and the son becomes an alcoholic, or if the mother and the grandmother were on welfare, then the daughter, the granddaughter, continues that and just stays on welfare. And we continue those family patterns. Why do we though? Because the answer is very, very simple. And the reason that we continue them is that we become so engrossed and ingrained in what happens around us that we don't stop to think, to plot our own course. It's really just that simple. Right, you're comfortable with what you know. You become comfortable with what you see and you just continue it. Even though they may say continuously that they don't want to live like that, or that they're not going to end up like this parent, or they're not going to end up like that aunt. They're not going to continue that. What happens in their adulthood 10, 15 years later is exactly that. They continue those family patterns, despite how negative they become. And I want to challenge each and every one of you to look at your family patterns and begin to debunk them. Despite how engrossed or ingrained or how far into those patterns you may already be, you could be the the one that turns your generational curse into a generational blessing. Because just because the father beat the mom doesn't mean that the son has to continue the same thing in his marriage. Or if the mom was addicted, thanks for the hearts, or if the mom was addicted to drugs, it doesn't mean that the daughter has to be addicted to drugs. If we just stop, look, and listen, if we begin to actually process thought, and I'm not being shady, what I mean by that actually is picture thought as an engine, and where you have the wheels and the belts turning. And that if you press this button, then that outcome happens. If we begin to process thought like that before we act, then you can change that behavior. And you'd be surprised you can change it on a dime, really. Because, for instance, in my family, there are 3 patterns. Hey, Retta, come on in. How are you? In my family, there are 3 patterns, really. Alcoholism, battery, and babies. Because essentially what people do is they grow up, go to school, get a job, have kids. Grow up, get a job, have kids. And that's just generationally over and over and over. Nobody starts their own business. Nobody does traveling. Nobody learns a different language. Nobody steps out of the box to do anything differently. Now, of course, by now you've realized that I am the black sheep of my family because I do want those different things. I do see life differently, and I have no desire to continue those patterns. And I challenge each and every one of you to do the same thing, to chart your own course and to begin to look at and be real and accept what your family patterns are. Now, it doesn't mean that you step out and try to change your family members. We have to let people be who they are. But starting with you and starting with your family, the family that you create, that you produce, you can just begin to change those patterns. Because what changes those patterns is exposure. And you can expose children with television. You can expose children with magazines. You can expose children just with your imagination. It's the expectations that you put on them. It's the expectations that you look for results from that actually makes that change. So if you expect your son to go to college and you expect your son not to hit women, you expect your son not to be an alcoholic, and you begin to ingrain that in him from a very young age, what you train up a child to do is how they will turn out. It's not rocket science. A lot of the challenges that we go through in life are because we make life so complicated. We make it complicated. It wasn't meant to be that way, but we actually make it complicated. And if you keep it simple, your thought processes, if you keep it simple, you accomplish a lot and you go a lot further than trying to partners in play. I know that name. What's your name again? You be able to go a lot further, a lot faster. I know parents that are putting Janae, hey Janae, how you doing? Because I know parents that put expectations on their kids. For instance, I had a friend and they didn't have television in their house until their kids were probably 10 or 11. And they have 2 kids, 2 years apart. And until those kids were like 10 and 12, they really did not have television in their home because they wanted to control what their kids were exposed to during their formative years. They specifically, mom and dad, specifically stated that they did not want their children to continue the family patterns that they were born into. So by not having television and by sitting down with their own lesson plans and their own, aside from what school was teaching, sitting down with their own lesson plan. Thank you for inviting your followers too. Sitting down with their own plans for how they were going to expose, mold, and shape their kids during their formative years. I got to tell you, so far, they've turned out 2 straight-A students that are in college right now, and they both want to be lawyers. So, and they're making straight A's in college too. And it's because they aren't missing anything. When their classmates talk about cartoons that came on when they were a child, those kids remember, but they remember from a lot older age. say 11 and 12 versus 3 and 4. But it's the same episodes over and over and over. So they didn't miss out on anything. If you want to break family patterns, you must be very active in that process. Yes. Yes, you must be. You must be very active in that process. Because I knew for me, like I said, there are 3 very strong family patterns in my family. One is alcoholism. Another one is battery. My people love to fight. And another one is babies. They just continue the same thing over and over and over. Nobody tries to understand or tries to heal themselves before they just procreate and continue those same negative patterns over and over and over, generation after generation. It is so disheartening to watch how generation after generation to see that same pattern display itself, even if it displays itself in a different manner. For instance, the father or the grandfather was an alcoholic, but then the grandson is very tumultuous and argumentative. Well, he's like that because his dad used to beat his mom all the time. I don't understand how nobody else sees those patterns and those effects. I do. And it is very, very difficult to watch. It's very difficult to just, because it's so big, it's not something that one person can do anything about. And like I said, because I see these differences and I talk about them, you can say that I am the black sheep of my family. I think the negative patterns continue because no one talks about it. That's why this is a great scope. Thank you. Yes, nobody does talk about it. And we do call it a generational curse. Like I said, you can be the one to turn that generational curse into a generational blessing. We got to start talking about it, which is one of the reasons that I'm coming forth and putting my stories out there. And I have just begun to tell my stories. I got so much more that I can share. Like I've been sharing so far with my father being an alcoholic, and between the ages of probably 2 or 3 and 15, he tried to set the house on fire 3 times with his family asleep in the house. The first time my mom caught him and he didn't get the house on fire. The second time I caught him, and I actually wrote a blog post about it. It's on my website, thatanitalive.com. And I wrote about what that experience felt like. My brother, I also speak about sibling abuse and how during my early teen years, I had a brother that he would wake me up sometimes and he would just be pounding his fist into my flesh, like into my back. Or for some reason, he thought that he was a father instead of just a brother and could tell me what to do. Like would move out of the house, yet for some reason would show up back at the house 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I would be watching television and he would just begin to fight me and tell me to get out. And I would be sent out. I would be running out into the night seeking safety. There were plenty of nights that I can remember sleeping on a heating grate until morning that I could get home or get to somebody else's house for safety. Because as you know, people don't listen to runaways. All they do is drag them back to the house that they ran away from. Nobody seeks to understand the problem. Girl, I am so blessed for it. Thank you for feeling that way, but I am so blessed for it because think about all of those nights that I was out by myself, walking the streets, and nothing happened to me. So think about the grace of that. Because when I think about that grace and I think about the faith that I had during that time and during that process, because that's a lot of the reason of why I have the strong faith that I do now, because nothing did happen to me during that time period. And I knew once I graduated from high school, there would be no turning back. I'm sure you grew closer to God because of it. I sure did. I sure did. At a very early age, I sure did. And I learned that when He is all you have, you realize, and it's a phrase, and we take phrases for granted sometimes, but you realize He is all you need. So when people turn on you and they become haters, people that you thought you could depend on, it won't bother you as much because you know the only one that you really and truly have to depend on, the only one that you really and truly have that has your back is God. His grace is sufficient. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Suni. It is so sufficient. And that's how I know you can turn your family patterns around. You can debunk your family patterns, starting with yourself, and easily turn it around. We can stop the alcoholism. We can stop a lot of these fights that we have going on in the street. We can stop a lot of these murders that we have going on with the crime. I read a story today that went into detail about a young lady being beaten to death in a high school. One article said it was in the bathroom. Another article just said it was in the school. But imagine that. You send your daughter to school to learn. If she doesn't go to school, in some jurisdictions, the parent goes to jail. But now you send your daughter to school to learn and to become a productive citizen of society. And now in 2016, you have to be concerned not just for her safety, but for her life. In 2016, in the United States of America, that blows my mind. We have to step out and begin to talk about it more, because what we don't talk about, what we don't confront, we can't change. And we got to start working on changing. The best way to start changing it is with ourselves. Then once we better ourselves, it begins to spread across our communities, even if it skips people within your family, and you see how much better they could be. You can't make that change for them. You can't take responsibility for what you can't change and what you didn't commit. Tell my clients that all the time. You cannot take responsibility for what you can't change and for what you didn't commit. But just think about it. If one or two people within each household was to begin to make that change, and then we could affect our communities. And though they may not be perfect places, perhaps we can make them better places. We can make them better places for the generations to come. I don't have children. I don't want children. But for those of you that do have children, this is quite a world to raise them in. So we got to start working on making it a better place for them to grow up and for them to actually have an adulthood. There may be nothing here for them to grow up into if we don't begin to take better care of ourselves emotionally and mentally. And if we don't begin to take care of each other emotionally and mentally. There are so many people in this world that feel as if they have nothing and no one else to turn to. I'm not sure of why, but there are so many people that feel alone or that they live in a closet. And these people are out amongst folks every day. They get up and go to work around people every day. A woman after my own heart. I don't have children either. And I don't want any. I do not want. And I feel for the parents that are out there now that are having to raise kids according to popular opinion. The mother in Tennessee who had the twin daughters, the 10-year-olds, that she they kept missing the bus. So she had them walk to school and she drove along beside them as they walked to school. I think it was 3 miles. And the cops took her to jail for child neglect. Do you know how many kids we have that are in some of these projects, apartments, that haven't seen their parents for days, that are living in squalor? No furniture, maybe a mattress, trash everywhere. That's child neglect. This officer needs to work in a city jurisdiction for about 60 days. They really need to be exposed to the full vast of what America entails and not just the 10 miles that they grew up in. Because there is a bigger world out here and we are all being affected by it. To be affected by it is to be a part of it. You can't just close your eyes and pretend you're in an alabaster box and there is no wrong in the world. Like how people went after Beyonce for her Super Bowl performance. I didn't see it. I saw all of the after effects. So, of course, I saw it after the Super Bowl. But it made a lot of people uncomfortable. And I don't know Beyonce, but my guess is that's what she was going after. Because there are people that are comfortable and that are pretending it doesn't exist in their world until it does. And then when they're affected by it, it's, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening. That never happens in my neighborhood. It's happening 2 blocks from you. So why didn't you think it would one day happen in your neighborhood? You can't pretend that it's not going to hit you one day or that it's not going to affect you. We all are responsible for each other. We all are responsible for making the world a better place than what we found it. And my contribution to that is to speak and coach on living unashamed, and you not allowing your baggage, your failures, the families we were born into, not allowing any of that to stop you from moving forward in your destined greatness. If you want to be a lawyer, go to law school, become a lawyer. If you want, too many people get comfortable in their discomfort. That's why the negative cycle continues. Yes. And I also hear from time to time, well, I don't know anything different. And once upon a time, that was true. Once upon a time, I would accept that as an excuse or a reason. But now, in 2016, there's too many channels on TV that broadcast about colleges. There are too many channels that talk about health and healing. I mean, between Oprah and Ayala and Steve Harvey and TD Jakes, come on. You can learn something different. Steve Harvey is famous for telling us all the time that his exposure was due to travel magazines. That's what made him want more in life. Magazines. Travel magazines. His mom would give him travel magazines when he was little because they couldn't afford to take him any place. So he would flip through the magazines, and he and his mom would talk about how wonderful those places are and what languages they speak in those places. And this man now has, seven-figure jobs and is worth over $150 million. And all of that from the imagination of going through a magazine. We can change it. Like I said, it starts with the imagination. If you can change it in your children, you can change it in yourself. If you're sitting on a job right now, because statistics come out every year, and the numbers are different, anywhere from 52 to 70%, they'll report, of Americans are unhappy with their lives, unhappy with their jobs, unhappy with the way they're living. Change it. Why do you get up and go to a job every day that you can't stand? And not necessarily am I saying that you can't stand the people that you work with. I'm saying you can't stand what you do. You're an accountant. You've outgrown it. You don't like accounting anymore. Change it. Okay, then the next story is, well, I can't change it because I have kids and they have to go to college, so I can't. Yes, you can. Accounting has transferable skills that you can transfer into another career that you would like better than the career that you're in now. Those transferable skills, y'all, I've had 22 jobs in 12 different career fields because I've made changes, and each time I've made career changes, I didn't lose anything in salary. There was a 5-year period where in changing positions and marketing my transferable skills, I tripled my income, tripled it within a 5-year period. It's not hard to do. You just have to have the self-confidence to put your foot down and do it. Just like changing your family patterns, you just got to put your foot down and decide that you're going to do it. It's not hard. It's not complicated. Keep it simple. Debunk your family patterns, and let's make our communities a better place. Catch up with me. people so underutilize their transferable skills. That's how they remain stuck. Yes, that is. It's exactly how they remain stuck. And they want to lean on, get stuck in excuses. They want to blame the kids. They want to blame the economy. None of that. Just like we were saying earlier, His grace is sufficient. If you figure out what you want to move to, His grace is sufficient. You partner with the right one, and His grace is sufficient. Catch up with me. My website, thatanitalive.com. Check out my blog posts. Leave me a couple of comments. Let me know what you think. For my personal story, if you want more details, they are also in my blog post. And then there's also a shortcut from my homepage to my personal stories. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all as That Anita Live. Or you can send me an email, anita@thatanitalive.com. Sometimes in Periscopes, I'll answer questions that I receive via email. Any feedback that you have, I'd love to hear it. You agree, you disagree, send it to me. We can chat either via Twitter, via email, however you get in contact with me. Hope you all enjoy your evening, and I hope you enjoy all of the Prince tributes that will be out tonight. Enjoy your evenings. Be blessed.